The Edmonton Oilers struggled throughout the 25-26 season, eventually managing to finish second in the Pacific Division before falling in the opening round to the Anaheim Ducks. The expectation this year was unquestionable, with going to the Stanley Cup Final past 2 seasons only to lose both years to the Florida Panthers. So, Neil, for them, it's Stanley Cup or bust. But as we saw with the personnel and the moves that were made over the offseason, this was going to be a challenging year for them.
It was, and when we saw them all start off slowly, we figured, well, that's the way they start every year, and they're going to get it going. But when you took a good look at their lineup every night, they didn't come up with the depth. They didn't seem to have the depth that you need to support their star players like McDavid and Draisaitl. If they didn't do it, there was nobody left to do it.
During the offseason last year, they lost Corey Perry, they lost Evander Kane, and they lost Connor Brown. And you take these guys out of their lineup that would get you the odd goals. You know, they weren't scoring 30 goals, but they would get you key goals at key times. Zach Hyman missed the first 19 games of the season with that wrist injury that he suffered in the conference finals and didn't play until November the 15th. And also the attrition of playing in consecutive finals and the mental part of losing both of those all didn't really add up for a team that was going to repeat what it did in the 2 previous years with the slow starts and coming on late in the finish. And I think as we watched this team during the course of the regular season, we kind of fell into that trap because, all right, they're slow out of the gate, they're slow at Thanksgiving, they're slow at Christmas, and then they start to pick it up and you say, here they come again, but then they fell off. And that traction was just never there all season.
It wasn't, but I think that what really made everybody's eyes open wide and you started to really wonder about the Edmonton Oilers was when they made that goaltender trade. And they traded away Stuart Skinner for Tristan Jarry with Pittsburgh. And, you know, you sort of looked and said, WTF?
Well, you did, because the numbers don't lie here either. And the team last year had a 2.84 goals against average, 894 save percentage. Not great, but still above the league average as we've come to know it now. But this year, 3.20 goals against and a .879 save percentage. And Tristan Jarry, after he was acquired on December the 12th, 3.86 GAA, 858 save percentage. I mean, that's like beyond dreadful. And meanwhile, Stuart Skinner, 2.99 and .885 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So then, of course, Connor Ingram comes into the mix because Calvin Pickard is sent down. And at the end of the season, who knows? Maybe Pickard was the best of the three of them.
Yeah, I mean, Connor Ingram is a guy who was with the Utah Mammoth and was bought out, put on waivers, and ended up signing in the American Hockey League. And you make a trade for Tristan Jarry, who had also passed through waivers earlier in the season, and you trade away Stuart Skinner, who went to consecutive Stanley Cup finals and was their number one guy in both years. And Pittsburgh got better when Skinner came in, and Edmonton got worse.
Pittsburgh also got Brett Kulak, who is now playing for Colorado, and the Penguins in return got Sam Girard. So this deal turned out to be a complete disaster. And now you put on top of this the increased dependency on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And to give this a little bit of perspective, 23-24, first year the Oilers went to the final, 24.8% of the goals were with that pair. But helping that out was Zach Hyman had 54 goals that year, and there were 13 multi-goal scorers 2 years ago. Last year, 30.1% of the goals were scored by McDavid and Draisaitl, and the team only had 10 multi-goal scorers. And then this past season, 29.4%, McDavid and Draisaitl, and the team only had 8 multi-goal scorers. And in addition, the power play, which actually improved from 23.7% and moved up to 30.6%, that was a quarter of the Oilers' goals. So when you take all of those numbers, clearly how one-dimensional the Oilers were and just too dependent on that power play.
Too dependent on McDavid, Draisaitl, and Bouchard on the back line. Hyman when he was playing, when he was healthy. Nugent-Hopkins, also good on the power play. But they had to have all those guys on the ice in order to score their goals. Or they had to have McDavid and Draisaitl at 5-on-5. But you're right. I mean, you can see the dependency clearly on their top players. And if they're not going, they don't win.
I want to drop a line in about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins because in 22-23 had career highs with 37 goals, 67 assists, and 104 points. And I think that there's this optic out there that he's a big producer offensively. But truth is, he's played 15 seasons in the NHL, and besides that 1 year, he has never hit 30 goals and never hit 70 points in the 14 other seasons.
He's a, sort of a Swiss Army knife for the Edmonton Oilers. He's played a long time. He's good in a lot of roles, but not great in any one of them. That's why he's lasted so long, because every coach likes him. You don't get the downside of being bad defensively. You don't get the extreme upside of a first overall, but he's a very usable piece in this puzzle.
I think something else to look at here, and we've been talking about it for the last few seasons actually, is the support for the big shooters on this team. And we did see a little bit of progress this year coming from Matt Savoie as the season went on. And Vasily Podkolzin was also fairly solid for them, particularly in the playoffs. I thought was actually one of the better players for the Oilers. But, they acquired players like Trent Frederick, and you're thinking, okay, where's the extra goal scoring going to come from? And aside from the two players that I just mentioned, it is just too top heavy, and there's no getting around it.
No, they don't have that secondary scoring that you hear about on all the broadcasts of all the games. It's a very overused term, but secondary scoring isn't there for the Edmonton Oilers the way it needs to be to take pressure off of their top guys. As I said earlier, if their top guys aren't rolling and scoring, the Oilers are in trouble.
So a lot of work ahead for General Manager Stan Bowman, who has been lambasted for the last 5 months over the Jarry deal and basically standing by it, saying that he thinks that this is the guy that's going to get him back to the finals. And, of course, we know what happened. But he's got a couple of other headaches sitting right out in front of him. One, what is he going to do with his head coach, Kris Knoblauch, who would now be starting his third full season with the Oilers if he stays on? And the second is the Connor McDavid contract, where he took a little bit of a hometown discount, signed for 2 additional years back in October at $12.5 million a year, so that's less than what Leon Draisaitl's making. But also that there was a provision that McDavid wanted to see a commitment to improving this club. And if we just look at what we have seen over the past season, the 25-26 Edmonton Oilers were anything but that. And even the superstars on the club said, we took steps backward this year.
Yeah, there was a press conference where Draisaitl and McDavid both said that, and they're not happy with the direction the team is going or went this season. And they're going to have to do something to get these guys happy. And it's a tough place to be in. He knows this, Stan Bowman does, because he did it with Chicago Blackhawks. They had the cream of the crop players at one time. He was a GM. And it's a tough thing to do with a salary cap to acquire more good support players when you're giving so much money to the McDavids and the Draisaitls and the Bouchards.
The salary cap is almost immaterial at this point. I mean, they are actually over the cap, although obviously they will have more funds to work with once the reset happens on July 1st. But in terms of draft picks, they only have 4 in this year's draft. They have none in the first round. That went to San Jose in acquiring Jake Wallman at the 2025 deadline. They had none in the fourth round. That was part of acquiring Trent Frederick from Boston as part of a 3-team trade with Jersey in March of 2025. And they've none in the fifth round. That was sent to Nashville in a swap of picks that took place last year. Their UFAs, Adam Henrique, Jason Dickinson, who they acquired during the course of this season from Chicago, Jack Roslovic, who performed relatively well with them when healthy, Kasperi Kapanen, another guy that would show you signs of offense and then disappear for weeks at a time. Max Jones and Curtis Lazar round out the forwards. And then Connor Murphy, another acquisition from the Blackhawks during this season, and Connor Ingram. And their RFAs, Colton Dock, Spencer Stastny, and Owen Michaels out of Western Michigan. And the only reason I'm mentioning him is because he's from Western Michigan.
Well, it's going to be interesting because they got Connor Murphy and Jason Dickinson from the Blackhawks at the deadline. As you said, Adam Henrique's been there for a few years, but none of those guys are guys that you must keep, that you have to keep. So it's going to be a lot of work for Stan Bowman and his staff to find out, if not these guys, then who? Where are we going? Who are we getting?
Who are you going to attract to go there? Because I think we've talked about Winnipeg also, and this is almost a two-pronged fork here that, well, I'm going to go to play for Connor McDavid. Well, if I'm a free agent, I'm not signing there long-term because he may not be there after the 27-28 season. The weather is brutal in the winter, so that's another reason I'm not going to want to sign long-term. Could this be a situation that we saw several years back in the pre-McDavid era where players go to Edmonton for the end of their careers because nobody else wants to sign them?
I don't think so, Vic. I don't think with those guys, McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent-Hopkins, we just said, and Bouchard on defense and that, I think it's going to be attractive for a player to go there. When he hears his agent say, Edmonton wants to sign you, I'm not talking about the top free agents. I'm talking about the next tier. Edmonton wants to sign you. They want to have you there to play with McDavid. And it's very attractive to a player to go to that situation with them playing there.
But McDavid, maybe only 2 more years. Bouchard, 3 more years on his deal. Draisaitl will be there long-term, as will Darnell Nurse. But the main attraction, and really the reason for going there, is to play with 97. And I think not only is the window closed, I could potentially see if this team does not stock up and get production to support these guys, I could see them missing the playoffs in 26-27.
Anything is possible. We saw the total collapse of the dumpster fire in Toronto, where they just went from 100-point season down to the dregs in the bottom and now have first overall in the draft. It can happen. It can happen. But I would think that Stan Bowman and his staff this summer won't let that happen. I would think that they'll still be very competitive. And don't forget, they're in the pathetic division, which is the Pacific Division. But this year, they would have been hard-pressed to make the playoffs in the East with the amount of points they got. Now, they would have played differently if they were playing in the East, yes. But they're not in a strong division. They're not in the Central Division. If they were there, you'd really be worried about them. They're in the Pacific. And I just find it really interesting to see what they're going to do to get themselves back in the chase.
And oh, by the way, there is still a massive goaltending problem that needs to be addressed.